Remember when Castiel walked up to Sam, Dean, and Bobby and straight up declared himself the new god?
I'm your new god.
And this entire time, the actual god was still alive somewhere, finishing his next bestseller. Or when the show introduced the literal Antichrist and then just never mentioned him again?
Get out of her.
Yeah, these are the top 10 supernatural mistakes you never noticed. Number 10, Sam Winchester, future lawyer? Okay, so we're literally not even out of the pilot episode before Supernatural hands us its first continuity error, and I need you to stay with me on this one because it's genuinely embarrassing. Dean shows up at Stanford to drag Sam back into the family business, which, if you've seen that episode, you know is already a lot, because Sam has finally built something for himself. Jessica is there. He's got his whole life going. And then the show casually tells you that Sam is about to start law school. Law school usually requires a completed 4-year undergraduate degree first, and Sam is already talking like his law school interview is right there in front of him. But in that same episode, Dean also says that in almost 2 years, he has never bothered Sam or asked him for anything. So the timeline instantly starts feeling weird, because the show wants Sam to feel like he has been gone long enough to build this whole Stanford life, but also young enough that the math around college, law school, and his age starts getting messy the second you think about it for more than 5 seconds. Creator Eric Kripke later admitted this was a flat-out script error, and that Sam was originally supposed to be younger, and they quietly adjusted the age and moved on without a single line of acknowledgement, which is honestly the most Winchester energy you could possibly bring to a mistake. Number 9. Did they even go to the Grand Canyon? The show had the entire continental United States to work with. The brothers drive across it for 15 seasons, and somehow managed to trip over the same landmark twice across 6 years of episodes. In Croatoan, which is already one of those episodes that just lives in your chest because of how trapped and hopeless everything feels, Dean mentions offhand that he and Sam have never been to the Grand Canyon, and it's this quietly sad little detail about 2 guys who've spent their whole lives on the road but somehow never actually stopped to see any of it. Then you get to season 8, and Sam is having this whole warm memory about the time John took them there when he was 4 years old, pack mules and everything. And apparently one of those mules was just absolutely relentless about passing gas the entire ride down. Writer Ben Edlund personally went on Twitter to admit this was a straight-up mistake, which is the most honest possible answer, but also means no one in the writer's room caught it across 6 years and hundreds of episodes. And if that's not a little bit chaotic, I genuinely don't know what is. Number 8. Dean introduces himself as Dean? Okay, check this out because this one is so fast that you'll miss it entirely on a first watch. But once you see it, you genuinely cannot unsee it. In Wendigo, right there in season 1 while the show is still figuring itself out, Dean is running the standard fake federal agent routine with a victim's family member, which is completely normal Winchester operating procedure. And he pulls out an official-looking ID to back up his cover, except the card identifies him as Samuel Cole. That would be totally fine in the context of their lifestyle, except Dean had literally just introduced himself using his actual name to this exact person 30 seconds before showing them that card. The whole fake identity system is already kind of shaky, given that these two are on federal watch lists and still somehow walk into active crime scenes with the same faces and the same car and Sam's extremely recognizable hair. But this takes it further by not even letting the alias survive a single interaction. Samuel Cole existed for approximately 1 scene and then was never heard from again, which, honestly, same. Number 7. Death got his ring back before Dean actually returned it. This is the kind of thing that gets permanently lodged in your brain once you spot it on a rewatch, and I want you to go back and look because you're going to be shocked when you see it. In Appointment in Samara, Death makes this deal with Dean where he hands over his ring and lets Dean spend a day doing the job. And if you've seen that episode, you know the ring is treated as this significant and powerful object with real weight to it throughout the whole story. Because the whole point is that Dean is holding something that belongs to the most untouchable entity in the supernatural universe. A being so ancient that even God can't fully control him. And then, before Dean has actually given the ring back, Death is already wearing it again on his finger mid-scene, like nothing happened at all. I mean, can you believe that? The entity who predates creation apparently just quietly manifested his own property back onto his hand, and the episode moved on like we weren't all sitting there doing a double take at the screen. Number 6. The Rougarou hunt Jon definitely went on. Okay, so this one is going to get you if you're a lore person, and I know you're a lore person because you're here, so take a look at this. The Winchester Journal is one of the foundational tools of the early seasons, this documented record of the monsters Jon hunted and studied that Sam and Dean rely on constantly as a research resource. And the entire premise of it is that it gives them a head start based on everything their father already figured out. So when Metamorphosis in Season 4 introduces a Rougarou, and the boys treat it like something almost completely outside their working knowledge base, researching it like this is not exactly a regular Winchester family dinner topic. The episode plays their unfamiliarity totally straight, and you go along with it. Then Season 9 drops a flashback where a young Dean casually references their dad being out on a Rougarou hunt, like it's the most unremarkable thing that ever happened on a Tuesday afternoon in the Winchester household. Jon was hunting these exact creatures while his sons were still kids, and somehow Dean grows up into an adult hunter who doesn't immediately react like, wait, Dad had a whole case about this. Either Jon never wrote it down clearly, Dean somehow forgot the word, or the writers just wanted the Season 9 flashback line to sound cool and hoped nobody had their hunter's journal open. The journal had one job. Number 5. Henry Winchester left his family when Jon was young. The Henry Winchester story that Season 8 introduces is genuinely compelling mythology. The idea that Jon's dad was a man of letters who got pulled through time and died protecting his grandsons adds this whole layer to the family legacy that makes everything feel more connected and intentional. And then you go back and rewatch In the Beginning, which is already one of the best episodes the show ever did, because getting to see young Jon and Mary and understand how everything started is just devastating in the best way. And there's this moment where another character asks Jon to pass a greeting along to his father, and Jon responds like it's the most normal thing in the world, just casually, "Sure, I'll pass that along." No hesitation, no weirdness, completely relaxed. Not that his dad vanished, not that he hasn't seen him in years, not even a flicker of discomfort. Just a totally chill response that only really makes sense if Jon still has some kind of father figure present in his life at that point, which gets very awkward once Season 8 establishes that Henry disappeared when Jon was still just a kid. You can headcanon around it if you want, and say maybe someone meant a stepfather or older male relative, but come on, the scene was clearly written before the Henry Winchester retcon existed, and the show built an entire emotional backstory right next to an earlier episode that quietly doesn't fit. If this breakdown is hitting, and you want more deep dives into the shows that spent years building incredible mythologies and then quietly folded on their own rules, subscribing keeps these coming, and we've got a lot more where this came from. Number 4. Sam and Dean treat every death like the first death? Okay, I need you to sit with this one for a second because it gets more unhinged the more you think about it. By the middle seasons of Supernatural, Sam and Dean have both died and come back more times than most characters even appear on screen, through demon deals, angel intervention, God stepping in directly, and enough loopholes to fill the entire Men of Letters bunker library. Now, to be fair, death still hurts. Trauma is trauma, and just because your brother has crawled out of the afterlife before does not mean you're going to calmly make coffee while his body is on the floor. But the pattern still gets wild because both of them know from direct personal experience that death in their world is not always permanent, that the other one is going to start looking for a way back, because they always do, and that the whole cycle is basically baked into how their lives work at this point. And yet every single time one of them dies or comes close to it, the surviving brother falls apart with the full devastation of someone encountering mortality for the very first time. And the show plays it completely straight, like we haven't watched this exact emotional spiral across a dozen seasons already. By season 10, these two should have at least a loose post-death protocol, a checklist, a group chat with Castiel labeled, "What do we do now?" But instead, every death lands like the first one, and the writers are just gonna hope you're crying too hard to notice the pattern. Number 3. Reapers turn out to be angels, which gets really weird when you remember what happened to Tessa. This is the one that gets really messy when you go back and look at it carefully. And I want you to take a look at this, because the lore math here just does not add up cleanly. Season 9 drops the reveal that Reapers are basically a type of angel, or at least angel adjacent enough that the show starts folding them into heaven's whole cosmic system. And on its own, that's a perfectly fine piece of mythology to add. The problem is that early Supernatural treated Reapers like something much stranger, older, and more separate from angels. And the biggest headache is Tessa. Back in My Time of Dying, Tessa is introduced as a Reaper guiding Dean after the car crash. And then Azazel shows up and possesses her to get close to Dean. That made sense at the time because Reapers were being presented as their own kind of death being, not as angels under the heaven umbrella. But once the show later starts treating Reapers as angelic beings, that old scene suddenly gets extremely awkward. Because demons possessing angels is not just some casual thing that happens in Supernatural. Angels need vessels, demons possess humans, and those categories are usually treated as very different rules. So if Tessa is a Reaper and Reapers are angels, then Azazel casually using her like a demon vessel makes the whole early Reaper setup feel like it belongs to a different rulebook. And honestly, it kind of does. Number 2. Castiel declared himself the new god, and later Chuck Cannon made that even funnier. Okay, I need you to understand that this one genuinely breaks my brain every single time I think about it, and I've thought about it a lot. The Season 6 finale takes Castiel somewhere genuinely unhinged and kind of incredible. He absorbs millions of souls from Purgatory, walks in on Sam, Dean, and Bobby, and tells them flat out that he is their new god, and they need to show respect or he'll destroy them. And in the moment, it's one of the most dramatically charged things the show had done with his character up to that point. Now, at that point in the show, Chuck had not been officially confirmed on screen as God yet, so Castiel thinking Heaven's throne was empty technically makes sense inside Season 6. But once the later seasons reveal that Chuck really was God, that he had been around, watching, writing, disappearing, and acting like the world's worst absentee landlord, Castiel's whole declaration becomes accidentally hilarious in hindsight. Can you believe that? Castiel was standing there with purgatory batteries in his chest, announcing a hostile takeover of divinity, while the actual god was apparently still somewhere in the universe with writer's block and emotional damage. So no, it's not technically a contradiction in the moment. It's more like later canon turns the scene into the funniest cosmic confidence mistake possible. Because Cass didn't become God. He became a temporary apocalypse with a trench coat and a branding problem. Number 1. Supernatural introduced the literal Antichrist. Okay, so check this out because this one is genuinely the mistake that has lived in my head rent-free since it happened, and I think about Jesse Turner way more than this show ever did. Jesse gets one episode, and within that single episode, the show goes all in on establishing him as a category of threat completely unlike anything Sam and Dean have ever encountered. A kid who can rewrite reality just by thinking about it. And Castiel doesn't frame this as something manageable or containable, but as a genuine cosmic destabilizer. Something so powerful that heaven wants him eliminated, hell wants to weaponize him, and the angels are straight up afraid of what he could become. The episode even gives Jesse this really compelling emotional core because he's just a scared kid who doesn't understand what he is, and nobody around him is being honest about it. And it genuinely feels like the beginning of something that's gonna matter. Then Jesse decides to leave rather than be used by either side, and the show just lets him go and moves on. The apocalypse plays out without him. Lucifer rises and falls. Amara shows up. Chuck reveals himself. The world nearly ends about 4 more times, and Jesse Turner, the Antichrist, the being that literal angels were terrified of, is apparently out there somewhere living his absolute best life completely unbothered. And the show never once circles back to ask where he went, what he became, or whether any of that cosmic power ever came into play. 1 episode. That's genuinely all Jesse got. Drop the one that breaks your brain in the comments. And if you want us to keep going deeper on every season, hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you in the next one.